You were just in that
Hi
shot.
everyone, I'm Jack. Thanks for supporting Ross. Follow me at 226 Photography.
So before Amy hits that intro, I just wanted to say, if you have not particularly subscribed already, please hit that button below. I did promise that I wouldn't beg for subscribers in every video, and I haven't done, I believe, since February time when we got our 1,000 subscribers. So I appreciate everyone who has to date. But if you are new here, or you've been lingering around for a little while, or you were one of the 2,000 people that tuned in last week but you haven't subscribed, hit that button and you will see more content from our channel.
If I was born to be a winner, then I'ma grow up to be a go-getter. Blood, sweat, and tears written in the blacks of kings. 1 in a million, the billions that have to sing. If I was born to be a winner, then I'ma grow up to be a go-getter. Blood, sweat, and tears written in the blacks of kings. 1 in a million, the billions that have to sing. When only all I know, see, where your stamina down, no overthrowing me. Joke left, joke right, I'm number 23. Every day of my life, the win is all I see. Train harder than most, it's more than a dream, this is reality. I was born to be king, break the sweat from my soul as I bring sound in and let it go with the form of a javelin throw. Come on, stay on my head to be dope. Wrap my hands up tighter than the rap that he wrote, then let it float like a butterfly right to your throat. Think it's a joke till you tenderize, beat you up so bad your friends will ask which way did he go. Hard to recognize, sorta like the face of a ghost. I'm blazing your boat, don't think you gon' be staying afloat. The waves on the coast claiming you on your way to the ropes, so let's go. Come on.
Right then, this is take 2 of a debrief video of my weekend of back-to-back racing. I say take 2 as, rather frustratingly, I just spent the last half an hour on a dog walk while Amy was running as well with Bryn, filming this so that it was a bit more engaging than me sat in my lounge with Bryn getting in the way, covering off my weekend of racing. So on Friday evening, we made our way up to Nottingham to Home Pier Point, and we parked the van up, plugged it in and set up camp for the night. We were joined by Mike and Joe. Mike is my reason for being in triathlon to start with. He is the one that was silly enough to get me to sign up to an Ironman in 2017, and we've been doing endurance and sort of stuff since. He got in touch during the week and said, I'm going to come and do the sprint, and entered last minute. I don't think he's done a triathlon since 2018, but he got his wetsuit, bike and running shoes packed in the back of his van, and he came up and spent the night with us before the race. We both were in the 9 o'clock wave, so we made our way over to the lake about 7:30, racked our bikes, registered, did all that sort of stuff, got ready for an hour or so of racing. The race itself was genuinely the most fun I've ever had, I think, doing a triathlon. I did do a sprint back in 2018, and I remember, to be fair, that being really fun, and maybe I should have focused more on shorter stuff for a little longer, or done more of it in my time. But I generally had a big smile on my face for most of that day, and certainly throughout the race. So the swim was a mass start for the wave. There was about 100 people in each wave. The swim was over really quickly. Obviously, I'm used to swimming for 3-4k, so a 750 meter swim seemed to fly by. I swam really well, or I thought I did. You can only really ever measure it off how you felt, but I saw a few guys shoot off the front very early on, and I kind of worked out that I was sat in 4th or so position in the water, and that's what I got out at. As I got out the water, Mike was right on my feet. As a fairly strong swimmer himself, he managed to position himself near me, and we got out the water together, which was pretty cool. But yeah, felt like I swam really well. Felt like my turnover was nice and high, and I had tried like harder than Ironman effort, if you like. Got out onto the bike fairly seamlessly. It's a fairly short transition. I did manage to pull the strap out of my shoe completely, and spent the first few 100 meters trying to thread the fast strap, or whatever they call it, back in, which was a bit annoying. But even with that little hiccup, I caught the 3 guys that had got away in the swim by the time we got to the top of the lake. And on the way out, there was a bit of a headwind, so you would ride that bit a bit harder anyway. Within the first few minutes of the bike, I knew I was leading. There was a lead moto for the front of the race to make sure that people had moved over, for example, and there were no geese or ducks, etc., waddling across the track as we were riding around. The bike itself was pretty uneventful. It was quite fun to ride somewhat behind a motorcycle. It wasn't as congested or anywhere near as congested as I thought it might be, particularly come laps 3 or 4. So you were able to ride pretty hard for most of it. I think I averaged around 290 watts. So I didn't ride particularly very hard, but the speed was pretty high, averaging around 41k an hour and coming in around high 27, low 28 minutes for the ride itself. And I think it was just over 19k, not quite a full 20k bike. I got onto the run. I did spend a bit longer putting socks on in transition. I didn't want to risk getting a blister, particularly with racing the next day and with hopefully an Ironman in a few weeks. I didn't want to take any risks there. But definitely spent another 20 seconds putting socks on, which I suspect most didn't. Out onto the run, the first kilometre you kind of weave out the back of the lake. There's a little bit of a hill, you run on gravel a little bit before you get back down onto the actual path that goes around the lake, but settled into a pretty solid effort. I did do some strides the day before and a one minute effort in a 20-minute run the day before, and that was the first time since before Texas, I think maybe 10 days before Texas, where it was the last time I did what I would call intensity, so faster than 4 minute per kilometre pace. And I felt fine. I was confident that I could go at the 5k and run fairly hard. Once we got onto the tarmac, I sort of got on my toes and kind of started opening the taps a bit. I had a word with the lead cyclist to try and find out what the gap to second was. I was quite keen to be first across the line, so I didn't want to necessarily get run down, and I was a little bit worried by that as I wasn't running like super quick, and I was worried there was some racing snake that might run a 15-minute or something 5k, but they got a radio call to say seconds onto the run now, and that was about when I was about 6 minutes in, 4 to 6 minutes into the run. So I knew I wasn't going to get caught. Got to the top of the lake. We then had a bit of a tailwind back home, but it's obviously 2.5k home. You do veer off the lake briefly to do sort of 500 meters on grass, and then you drop down somewhat, feels like downhill before the last sort of 700 meters to the finish line. I did pick the pace up. I did negative split the run, and the run time came in at 17:12 for the 5k. It might have been a tad short. I started my watch quite late. I only measured like 4.4k. I didn't actually start my watch until I was up onto the gravel path, so definitely missed off a fair chunk. But yeah, certainly a sub 18 minute, probably closer to 17:35k, which pretty decent for me, with zero intensity for the last 4 to 6 weeks. And yeah, kind of keen that the calf accepted that and sort of was pretty comfortable. Crossed the line, won the wave. 58:32 I think was the final finish time. Not that it was on a massive list of goals for me, but to do a proper legitimate sprint under an hour is pretty cool, particularly with a proper open water 750 meter swim and whatnot. Yeah, it's really exciting and something that was on the sort of triathlon bucket list to do at some point in my time, just like a sub 2 hour Olympic and a sub 4 hour half Ironman, for example, all show that you've got to be a pretty balanced athlete to do those sorts of things. We hung around for wave 2. There was a guy in the second wave, George Wilkes, who went a bit faster than me, so he technically won the day overall in the sprint, and I finished second overall. Yeah, I was happy to win my wave. It would have been great if we'd started in the same wave. It would have been interesting to see if I could have ridden a bit harder to catch him. He effectively beat me by swimming 2 minutes faster, and I outbiked him and outrun him slightly. So it would have been interesting to see if he had been up the road still, if I'd been able to catch him and have a bit of a foot race with him, and I'm sure he would have liked that as well to some degree, rather than both of us winning our waves by 4, 5, 6 minutes. Saw a number of the athletes from Optimal Endurance that were racing, in particular a shout out to James, who I coach, who we've worked together now for 4 or 5 months. It was the first time we met in person properly. And those sorts of things really give me like positive energy, and sort of, it's why I do coaching and why I like it, sort of stuff, to meet people and understand more about them than rather than just their triathlon life, if that makes sense. Also met some of you guys. I had a bit of a joke with Mike and Joe as we were wandering down in the morning that since the last triathlon you've come to with me, I've got a bit of a celebrity status now, if you like. And had people coming up to me throughout the morning, people shouting my name on the course. And it was great to meet people that watch the videos and seem to like them and feel like they know me a little bit, and gives me an opportunity to get to know them rather than just, you know, analytics on a screen that say X amount of people watched your video. So thank you to all those that said hello and whatnot. So that was quite cool. We then made our way down to Box End, which is just outside Milton Keynes, where Active Training World had some events on. The plan was to do the 100k Centurion race that they do. They have a few of these up and down the country. They used to have one in Hertfordshire that I've won a few times. But basically it's similar to the PTO or the T100 series type distances, where the swim's around 2k, the bike's around 80k, and the run's around 18 to 20k. In this particular instance, the swim was advertised as 2,250 meters. It was an 81k bike, which was 6 laps, and it was a 4-lap run, which was just over 20k. So the purpose of this was to effectively treat it like a training session. As I'm planning to do Ironman Hamburg in a few weeks, this would have been the last weekend to do a somewhat longer brick ride. In the training plan, I asked coach what would the training session look like. It was effectively a 3 to 4 hour aerobic but honest ride, so didn't have to necessarily chase a power, but don't just soft pedal around the countryside. And then a 90-minute run off the bike at sort of 4:10 per kilometre pace. So I said I'd rather do this event. I know the ride will be about 2 hours, so it'll be a bit shorter, but I will have swam beforehand, and the run is 20k, so it's spot on to like 80 to 90 minutes of running if I hit the pace. So as long as the sprint went well, we did that. So we drove down, we stayed overnight at the campsite, and then the morning of, I made the decision. I paid on the day to do the event. The calf was feeling fine. I was confident I could do it. The swim went really well. I'm pretty sure it was a lot longer than 2.2k based off the time. And I know a lot of people would say that, but I'm fairly confident I was swimming faster than what the average pace would be worked out to be. I also was first out the water, and it by no means was a massive race. Obviously, Outlaw Half was on. There were other races around the country. The Challenge Championship was on. So, you know, by no means was there like a strong field. But in any race I get out of the water first, I feel like I've obviously swam relatively well. So to get out of the water first meant I could get on the bike and just do what I wanted to do, in terms of I didn't feel like I need to chase anybody or ride hard away from anybody. My normal Ironman power is around 240 to 250 watts. That's what I sort of pushed in Texas. So I said to myself, nothing lower than 220. So I by no means rode hard, but I would ride fairly consistent and strong. The first lap was bang on 220 average, and then every lap I got a little bit quicker. For the whole ride, I averaged 230 and normalized 240, and I basically averaged, that shows a really consistent power output for what was 2 hours and 8 minutes. I averaged 38k an hour, 81k. I got faster pretty much every lap, to a point where then the last few laps were very consistent in their time. Some of that was I learned the lap as I went around. I learned where I was riding fast, where I was riding a bit slower, where the hills were. There was one little climb in each loop, where to push, where to hold back a bit. And that's just part of being good on a bike. You know, it's about how you apply the power to the road. So really happy. I think it's one of my best bike performances ever. Not because the number's anything special, just how consistent it really was. I'll put a graphic up to show my lovely pink line on Training Peaks here. So really happy with that. The heart rate was really great. It was like high 130s. To put that in some context for those that don't know, I normally race an Ironman and my average heart rate's like 150. So I was well below Ironman sort of heart rate, comfortable all day. All my food and fuel went down. I took one caffeine gel in like the last lap of the bike, or the penultimate lap. So I didn't load myself with caffeine pre-swim and at the early stage of the bike, but I did take on as many carbs as I normally do. I just felt really good, really strong, really controlled. There was a sprint and an Olympic on at the same time, so there was always people on all the laps I was doing, which was encouraging. People wishing each other well and so forth. Got off the bike. There weren't any timing maps, so Amy wouldn't have any idea of what split was to the next people, but that was somewhat irrelevant. I knew I was first in. Popped my running shoes on and off we went. The run was effectively a cross-country run. I should have known this to some degree. Amy did this race last year, albeit the Olympic distance, and the feedback was it's got a bit of a hill and it is off-road in places, etc. I thought I'd still be fine running in some Alpha Flies, but yeah, they was the wrong shoe choice. I would have been much better in a pair of trail shoes, effectively. So it was survival of the ankles for most of it. But yeah, set off. as the training session would have been 4:10s, that was the goal I had in my mind. I definitely felt like I could have ran quicker. I think I averaged 4:09 for the entire run. Some Ks were a bit slower, some were a bit faster, undulating up and down the terrain, but the effort was pretty much spot on. The heart rate was where I'd expect it to be for an Ironman. The fact that the pace was mirroring that, despite the terrain and whatnot, was great. All I kept thinking about was, there's 4 laps of this and there'll be 4 laps in Hamburg, albeit the laps will be longer in Hamburg, but treating it as like first lap settle in, second lap keep on top of fuel, hydration, food, etc. Third lap mentally focus on the pace a bit more, so don't let yourself drift off and worry about how hard this is or how much further it is to go, or the third lap always sucks in an Ironman. Just be really in tune with what I'm doing. And then the 4th lap's the last lap, so give it somewhat everything you've got, but in relative terms. I challenged myself in the last mile to basically run as hard as I could for a mile, if you like, or pick the pace up. And I said to myself as I started the last lap, that if you can't pick up the pace at the end of this lap, then this pace is not realistic for an Ironman. So yeah, got to the flat section. I'd measured it on previous laps, knew it was about a mile to the finish line. Gave myself, if I can run 3:45 pace, which is about a 6-minute mile from here, that's enough of a pace lift to show that you can do it. Crossed the finish line. Rather embarrassingly, Amy had told the announcer it was my birthday, which it was, but it's not something I wanted advertised. So happy birthday was playing as I crossed the line and finished in something like 4 hours 15, 4 hours 10, something like that, the whole event. And that was Sunday. Feel really good afterwards, both straight away, and obviously today's now Tuesday. I swam and biked yesterday. I have a full rest day today, which is a particularly normalish routine for me post race, where I do a bit of activity the day after, but 2 days after is the actual rest day. But I don't feel particularly sore. I don't feel particularly beaten up. My feet and ankles can tell they've run off road, if that makes sense. But I feel pretty ready to go and pretty keen to train, etc. So the final sort of bit to the puzzle then is it a go for Hamburg? Ultimately, both these races for me were testing whether or not Hamburg is realistic, and can the body and both mind sort of take that. For me, the answer is yes. I booked my flights this morning. Hamburg is definitely on. I'm back to confidence level where it could or should be. I definitely know I'm fit enough to do an Ironman. It's just a case of now executing swim, bike and run. I'm probably going to play it relatively safe in terms of my normal, try and swim as hard as I can, get under an hour, etc. Ride the bike, I think we'll go with a conservative approach and not try and chase the front of the race like I potentially did, or like I did in Texas and do normally, but just ride sort of under that effort level and see how that plays out. And then go and run sub 3 hours and stop talking about it and just do it. is what I'm going to try and do. There's no reason in my mind why I can't get to 25, 30k and be on pace for a sub 3. And then ultimately, I always think at that point, it's how much do you want it? Because if you can get yourself to that point, it isn't a question of physical fitness. It's a case of, have you fueled and hydrated, and have you got what it takes to kind of suffer for that 40 to 50 minutes that will be left. And I very much believe I'm so motivated to go sub 3 that part will be the easiest bit. It's just going to be nailing the first half of it. So that's the plan. Obviously Fenella's doing it. Hopefully Amy's going to come out as well, and we'll have a week out in Germany or so. So that's it for this week's video. We'll do a sort of pre-race video as you would expect. I've got some ideas of some videos that I want to do now that the channel's a bit more mature, shall we say. Thanks for watching. Drop any comments in the comments below, and look forward to catching up soon. Cheers.